what's your take on this whole deal, and fill us in on your thoughts?
Well, I mean, it's something that I think I believe the track kind of, you know, they made a mistake. I think they admitted they made a mistake and they just didn't quite order enough. So I think that's the position that we're in. You can't really do much about it right now, and you just kind of have to make the best decision possible. I saw they were meeting here for quite a while up on the driver's stand. I mean, you guys are right near it, and I think it's going to be tough to get going here. It's going to take a couple hours to shift some things around to kind of get everybody covered across the board. They said they should have enough, tire for everybody here as long as everybody kind of plays together. So, yeah, I mean, I think that's what I see. Um, it's just going to take probably a couple hours to make that happen.
Being that you have quite a few drivers here and the open practice allots any tire for usage, do you have guys, or what's your suggestion on that kind of playing out? You run whatever tire? Do you stay on the same thing? What's your deal?
Yeah, I mean, I think that, we brought two-wheel drive front tires here only because that's the only open item that you can participate with. So that's what that's what we prepared for. That's what we brought. We didn't bring like rears, four-wheel fronts. I think, I believe that you really kind of need to run what you're going to race on in the practice sessions, no matter what. I think you kind of need to do that. Sure, maybe the first run or two you could run anything just to drive around and get an idea of what the track is going to be like. But I think they do want the drivers to run the controlled tire in all those practice sessions too. So I don't know how exactly that's going to work, but I think they want everybody to be teched for the practice sessions. So I think we'll see that. I think we'll see that happening.
And, obviously you have a ton of knowledge in this. I can't confirm, but I believe AKA can press their tires here in the States still. Do you know if it comes down to, or if it ever did come down to it, the difference in the age, the cure time, anything like that? Clearly now we're not going to have to go that direction, but some people want to know, would that have made a big change if there was some new tires pressed versus ones that were, set aside earlier?
I think sometimes it's weird because we've had certain situations where we have had different, I guess, quote unquote batches of tires where we've raced them all together at different events, and there are times where they feel a little different, but when you get out and you drive them on the track, they perform the same.
Right.
So lots of times I think there is a little bit of over anxiousness or a little bit of too much concern. The drivers are extremely picky, and sometimes it's when you actually measure it on the track as opposed to all these things that you think about, because really what's most important is what happens on the track when you drive. And a lot of times I think people kind of overcomplicate it, but I would say that whatever they get in, if they could get fresher tires or equipment, I would be pretty confident that it would be the same. I mean, when you look at all the tires that they have here, the control ones that they have that people are buying and everything.
I have a question for you, and this is something that I personally want to know, and I'm sure others out there. When it comes to World Championships, we see F1 and a lot of just top performance. They do have a controlled tire. It's set throughout the world, or throughout the year. It's contracted in. You've been a tire manufacturer for the Worlds. In your opinion, do you think the World Championship should be on a spec tire, or do you want to be able to showcase your product as an owner and, this is associated and all these guys get to advertise as national champions, world champions when they win? Do you find any interference in this, or is it kind of not, you don't mind, or what's your take?
Well, I've raced in, previous Worlds where, we could run open tires in 10 scale. And what happened was we actually, I think we kind of forced this to happen as racers and companies, because what we would do is, and this started many years ago, they have a nice wall here of all the past champions, but I think If you look at the very first, we got Halsey, Gil Losi. Then you come and you got Joel Johnson and you got Masami. And right there at about 87, the tire war started. The first one, I don't think there was, as far as I understand, there wasn't a lot of tire war going on. A lot of people, a lot of racers were kind of, I don't know, a little, not, that hadn't really hit yet. But I believe that 87 Worlds is where the tire wars kind of started. And then, so Kyosho came really prepared for that Worlds in 87. Then they got to the 89 Worlds, which is in Australia. And then the tire wars really heated up because Yokomo, Masami, and Associated, they kind of got together, and Associated had a prototype two-wheel drive. Yokomo had 2.2-inch tires and wheels, and that kind of started the tire wars. Then we got to a different track condition in the 91 Worlds, and there was a bunch of tires, different tires there too. It was open tires still at that point, but it was a really loamy track. Then we went to the Worlds in Basildon, England, and there was still open tires. There was a little bit of a war there. There was some actually people for several practices or maybe even qualifiers sanded down front tires and had slicks fronts. Even back in 93, they were trying some slick fronts. Proline had the stubby rears was the tire, and then there was a IFMAR stud is what Losi had for the rear tire. And so there was some tire wars going on there. Then we went to the Worlds in Japan, which was in 95, which we were told that you couldn't compete there without the Yokomo tires because drivers like Mark Pavidis and all these guys went to warm-up races at Yatabe Arena, and the hot tire to run at the time was the Yokomo tires. And when Mark told me, Mark went to the warm-up race and he was practicing and driving, and he said, hey, I was doing okay, but Masami came to me at one point and said, hey, run these tires. And so he's like, I put on the Masami tires that he had broken in and had ready, and he's like, all of a sudden I TQ'd and won. And at the warm-up race. So he's like, I went from kind of being pretty good, he's like, I was doing well, but not amazing. Masami gave me a broken in set of tires, and he was like, oh, wow. So, and, they didn't know, Masami was a little ahead of the time, ahead of the game in tires, and he kind of knew the game well back then. And so, right away, Mark's like, and everybody's like, we all have to have Yokomo tires. That's the only way to go. So Yokomo shipped everybody tires for that race. I mean, I was at Associated. They shipped Yokomo tires to us and these big inserts and, with instructions how to cut them down. I mean, I think they shipped tires to Team Losi. Anybody that wanted them, they shipped them. I don't know if they had to pay. They probably did. But.
Right.
So we get there, and the Proline guys, which was Tim Clark and Todd Matson, they came to just hang out. They had点there, and they had just made the new flat fuzzy, square fuzzy tire. And I remember when we packed at Associated for the race, talking to Curtis Husting, he's like, hey, should we pack any of these Losi front tires, rib fronts? And we're like, yeah, let's take 10 or 12 pairs, whatever. He packed them in his stuff, and the Proline guys finished the square fuzzies with absolutely no intention of them thinking they were going to use them there. Well, the track dried out more than they typically was at that time, and all of a sudden, somebody tried the square fuzzy rears and the Losi rib fronts, and all of a sudden it was like, wow, these are working. And two-wheel was first. So Matt, long story short, Matt Francis ended up TQing and winning the race with the square fuzzy rears, the Losi rib front tires, and nobody anticipated that being even a combination at all that would be used. It was, just the fact that, back at Associated, Curtis had room. He's like, let's pack these fronts. The Proline guys came over to basically support the event and be there. They brought their newest tire, which was the square fuzzies, the 50, I don't remember what they brought, 50 pairs, or I forget what they brought. And so it started happening. Like pretty soon, like uh, the TQ to won with that tire. So this is open. So this is like kind of the games, right? This is like stuff that's happening at these races before the internet, before social media, and so then we get to the Worlds in '97, where I don't want to make this really long, but we got plenty of time.
Yeah.
We got plenty of time. So we go to the '97 Worlds, which is at the ranch. They prepare the track specially there at that race. Still open tires. Now we have it's Losey's track. The ranch pit shop was their track. They prepared it like a blue groove. So we had really at the time it was kind of the Pro Line guys ran Associated. Schumacher, they would run Pro Line. Mostly Losey guys, Losey tires there. So we kind of had a war there. There was kind of a line in the sand between the Team Losey group and their tires with their drivers, the Associated with the Pro Line tires. And then the race started, and Masami started to favor the Team Losey tires there. And Masami kind of, obviously, with his experience, obviously we talked about how much he was kind of the tire guy, as a racer. And he liked the Losey tire on that track. And pretty soon, you saw the owner of Associated in the ranch buying all these Losey tires to bring back to the pits, which was, it's embarrassing for the Pro Line guys because they're like, hey, we were prepared. I remember they made the 2-stage foams were brand new then. The ones that were blue on the inside, white on the outside. 3M spray adhesive together. That was the big thing there. So we had special inserts too. And we had M2.5 compound. So there was M2 and then M3. And they made for that race M2.5 because Masami said that's what he wanted. And they got there, they made a wide 2-wheel rear wheel. Before that, there was no multiple options for 2-wheel rear wheels. They were all narrower. So we were in '97. We're with the battle between the Team Losey tires, the Pro Line tires, Masami asking for a special compound, them delivering it for everybody on Pro Line. Then Masami saying, "No, I like the Losey tires." He goes to the Losey tires and TQs the race with the Losey tires. I mean, I was racing. I ran the Pro Line M2.5 rear whole shots, and I had broken in my front tires already because I had been there at the track, months before, and I broke in my front tires because I knew they were better. I broke in my fronts. I had, 6, 7 pairs of broken in fronts. They brought the M2.5 new rear tires. We mounted those, ran those, the 2-stage foams, the wide rear wheels. So you can see what's happening here.
Yeah.
So you can see, like, over the course of the years how this is, like, building, right?
Absolutely.
So by the time the race was over, Kinwall ended up winning the mains there, won the 2-wheel class with the Losey tires, and Masami I think got third there, also with the Losey tires. So I raced the mains with the Pro Line rears. I thought they were great. I was in the A and ran with everybody. It worked really well, but there was an uncertainty there, right? On the Pro Line side, ultimately what you wanted is what Masami had. He had the wide rear wheel. He had the option of the 2-stage insert if he wanted from Pro Line, and he ran the Losey tires. So he had the best of all worlds.
Right.
So he came in and said, hey, this is what I want. Then he tried it all and said, hey, I'm going to mix all these things together, and I'm going to come up with what I think is the best combination, which he did. And whether he actually raced with the wide rear wheels, I don't know, or the 2-stage rear inserts, but he had all he had it all there.
Right.
He could run whatever he wanted. And so you can see with all these components and all these parts that the complexity of having open tires was pretty difficult.
Building.
We get to the next Worlds, which was '99, and I was working along with me and Scott Hughes went there. The representatives with Pro Line. We brought all the tires. We made three brand new tires for the race in '99. We made a prototype front tire for 2-wheel, and we made a 4-wheel front and a 2-wheel, 4-wheel rear. So we had three new tires that were special to the team drivers only in '99. We brought them all on the plane somehow. I don't even know how we did it because we brought all these boxes with us. I think we went to LAX. Scott Hughes' dad dropped us off, and we just had 10, 12 boxes. And I think I just told the guy at the check-in, I'm like, hey, for like $200, can all these make it to Finland? And they're like, yeah. So I gave the guy, you could check in at the curb. We gave him, and they, checked them all in straight to Finland. So we had all these boxes of tires. And we got there. There was some controversy on what happened is those front tires and two-wheel were a big advantage. And because I knew that because I went to the warm-up. So we designed a front tire especially for that track. And the rear tire didn't work out as well as we thought it was going to, but it was between, we're still running the square fuzzy rear and the whole shot rear tire at that time. And Mark Pavidis was the top driver there, and he TQ'd with these new front tires we brought. He was running the square fuzzy rears, but what happened is it was only the front tires were only supposed to be for the pro line team drivers. But what ended up happening was somebody stole some along the way, and they ended up in the hands of some of the Team Losi guys. And I remember there was kind of like an argument in the pits why they had these tires, why it's look, we didn't give them to you.
Right.
We're the only ones that have them. Where did you get them? And they're just like, well, we don't know. I'm not going to say where I got them. And you're just like, okay, well, we were able to finish that situation. But what it did is it gave Kinwald a look at it, right? Mm-hmm. Kinwald was able to get a look at what was going on because he was really curious. And he was able to kind of set up what he had to make work. He's like, oh, okay, this is what's kind of going on. He was able to kind of not necessarily custom build a tire, but he was able to kind of sand it, get it to where the front we were using, and then he was kind of where he needed to be pace wise. So he was on pace then, and and then it was a battle between Mark and Masami, Kinwald, and I happened to be in that race too. But those guys were all kind of battling. Masami ended up winning with that front tire. He actually used the whole shot rear, and I think from that moment on, the reason I guess I'm telling this whole story is because by the 2002 Worlds, I think is when it went to controlled tire. So I think what happened is IFMAR and all the racers kind of saw this happen over the course of the years, and they kind of felt like, hey, this isn't the direction that we think is good for this event. And they decided that it would be better to choose, a tire ahead of time and have all the competitors use the same tire. I think touring car was kind of starting to get popular. Right. They were having their first Worlds, and they were going to use controlled tires because in touring car, if you have open tires, it's even worse. At that time, it was even worse. Masami would show up with his bag of tricks, and you were screwed big time. So that they learned some stuff in touring car, and they applied it to off-road. And I actually like this system. I like the controlled tire system because it's better for the racers. It's easier for us. I don't think in this day and age, by us, because if this was an open tire race, I mean, we would have 50 boxes of tires here, and probably half of them would be new or different, or that's kind of how we did it in the old days. We would prepare like that because you wanted to win, and you didn't want to let your drivers down, and that's really what it comes down to, is you don't want to let anybody down. And so you would have a big preparation on our end. And then the racers would still not know exactly, hey, was that the right thing or not? And they would be a little unsure. So I think the control tire aspect is the best. Just implementing it is the most difficult, as we can see. And it's always been like that. The hardest part of this event is the tires. because you can't give the racers access to them when they're not driving. They have to mount them in public view. They have to be stored together. And so you see right away the biggest part of the whole event is
Evened out.
the control tires. So, a lot of people ask me all the time. I was at the fuel mats this year, and a driver was asking me about it. So I started explaining to him what you would have to do to have control tires at that event. And it's people, So, and at a Worlds like this every 2 years, you can gear up. You can have the appropriate amount of and we can see them working over there right now. It's the busiest and the most active part of this event is, mounting them, storing them, putting them in your box, keeping track of it. And so it's having the individuals that want to either donate their time or somebody that's wealthy enough to just pay a bunch of people to do it. But that's why I think you can do this at the Worlds, maybe a large Euros or a Roar National, you could do something like this with the appropriate people in place. But you can't do it for every event because it's just too much work. So, but I like it for this. It's unfortunate, it's unfortunate that you get in a situation like this, but it'll get worked out. And ultimately, once everybody gets on the track, you kind of it kind of disappears because I think there's a lot of nervous energy with everybody. So when you can't drive the cars out here, everybody's just, everyone's got 1,000 ideas and everybody's an expert. And why didn't you do this? And why didn't you do that? And it's like, well, that's all easy to say. Everybody's an expert, looking at it, with that kind of vision. But, you don't, now you're just faced with a situation and you make the best decision you can and you just got to go with it.